The massive Zephyrian war fleet emerged from hyperspace like metallic thunder, their ships casting shadows across Earth's blue marble. Admiral Kextar studied the primitive world through his command bridge's viewing screen, his forearms crossed in disdain. Behind him, his officers chattered excitedly about the easy conquest ahead. "Look at this pathetic rock," Commander Vorth sneered, pointing at the tactical display. "They still use chemical propulsion. Their weapons are barely beyond projectile launchers. This will be over in hours." The Zephyrian Galactic Command had been expanding across the galaxy for 3 centuries, absorbing world after world into their empire. Earth was supposed to be their easiest target yet. Intelligence reports showed a divided planet with outdated technology and no unified defense force. The humans had barely begun exploring their own solar system. "Sir, we're receiving transmission attempts from multiple locations on the surface," reported the communications officer. "They're using primitive radio waves." Admiral Kextar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Ignore them. Deploy the first wave to the major population centers. We'll have their surrender within the rotation." The fleet consisted of 200 battleships, each capable of devastating entire continents. But Kextar was confident he wouldn't need such overwhelming force. The plan was simple: land near major cities, demonstrate superior firepower, and accept humanity's inevitable surrender. Most species capitulated after seeing a single plasma bombardment. As the first wave of landing craft descended toward Earth's surface, the bridge crew watched their sensors with boredom. The human military was scrambling their aircraft, primitive jets that couldn't even reach low orbit. A few surface installations fired missiles that bounced harmlessly off Zephyrian shields. "Commander, should we return fire?" asked the weapons officer. "Not yet," Kextar replied. "Let them exhaust their ammunition first. It's more entertaining this way." The landing craft touched down outside major cities across the globe. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow all witnessed the arrival of sleek alien vessels disgorging thousands of armored warriors. The Zephyrians moved with mechanical precision, their energy weapons humming ominously. Human resistance was exactly what they'd expected. Tanks rolled forward, firing explosive shells that barely scratched Zephyrian armor. Infantry units unleashed everything from assault rifles to rocket launchers, creating impressive light shows but little actual damage. The aliens advanced steadily, occasionally firing warning shots that vaporized buildings. "This is almost disappointing," Vorth observed as reports flooded in from landing sites. "At least the Corellians on Nexus Prime fought back for 3 rotations. These humans are breaking already." Indeed, the major cities were falling rapidly. Military commanders worldwide were calling for withdrawal to defensive positions. Television broadcasts showed panicking crowds fleeing as alien forces marched through urban centers unopposed. But Admiral Kextar noticed something odd in the tactical reports. While cities were surrendering, vast areas of the planet remained silent. No communications, no military presence, no population centers to speak of. These regions appeared as green masses on their orbital scans. "What are these large uninhabited areas?" he asked, highlighting sections of the display. "Wilderness zones, sir," replied the sensor officer. "Dense vegetation, minimal infrastructure, probably where the primitive humans dump their waste or conduct crude agriculture." Kextar studied the massive green expanses that covered significant portions of every continent. Forests, jungles, mountains, deserts, areas his sensors showed as virtually empty of intelligent life. Perfect places to establish resource extraction facilities once the conquest was complete. "Any military installations in these zones?" "Negative, sir. Our deep scans show no major structures, no energy signatures, no communication arrays. Just wilderness and scattered primitive settlements." The Admiral nodded with satisfaction. Earth's military was concentrated around population centers, exactly as predicted. Once those fell, the empty wilderness would be theirs for the taking. Millions of square kilometers of untapped resources waiting to be harvested. As the first day of invasion concluded, Kextar reviewed the progress reports with growing confidence. Major cities on every continent had either surrendered or were under Zephyrian control. Human military forces were in full retreat. Casualty reports showed minimal alien losses, mostly from equipment malfunctions rather than enemy action. "Sir, human broadcasts are calling for global surrender," reported the communications officer. "Their leaders want to negotiate terms." "Let them wait," Techstar decided. "Another rotation of resistance will make them more grateful for our mercy." The bridge crew laughed at their commander's wisdom. This conquest was proceeding even more smoothly than their easiest previous victories. Earth would join the Zephyrian Empire before the week ended, and they could move on to more challenging targets in neighboring systems. But as night fell across the planet, something began to change. The wilderness zones that had seemed so empty during the day came alive with subtle activity. Human forces weren't just retreating, they were disappearing into those vast green spaces. Their conquerors had dismissed as worthless deep in the Amazon rainforest. Captain Maria Santos watched the alien landing craft through advanced camouflage sensors. Around her, dozens of special operations soldiers prepared equipment that had never appeared on any official military inventory. Weapons designed for situations exactly like this one in the Congo Basin. Sergeant Major David Chun coordinated with isolated teams spread across thousands of square kilometers of dense jungle. His men had been training for unconventional warfare for years, studying every possible scenario of asymmetric conflict high in the Himalayas. Colonel Yuki Tanaka organized mountain warfare specialists who could survive for months without resupply in terrain that would kill most humans within days. They'd been expecting this moment since the first deep space. Monitoring stations detected the approaching fleet, the Carpathian Mountains, the Canadian wilderness, the Australian outback, the Siberian forests, all contained similar teams of highly trained soldiers who'd spent their careers preparing for exactly this scenario. Elite units that operated so far off the official books that most governments didn't even know they existed, while the Zephyrians celebrated their easy victory in Earth cities. These ghost soldiers melted into landscapes they knew better than their own homes. They carried weapons the aliens had never encountered, employed tactics no galactic army had ever faced, and possessed an understanding of wilderness. Warfare that 3 centuries of easy conquests had never prepared the Zephyrians to counter. Admiral Kekstar studied the nighttime sensor readings from his command ship, noting with satisfaction how quiet the planet had become. A few scattered energy signatures in the wilderness zones, but nothing that suggested organized resistance. Probably just frightened civilians hiding in caves. "Tomorrow we begin Phase 2, he announced to his staff. "Resource extraction teams will deploy to the wilderness zones while occupation forces secure the urban centers. This primitive world will be stripped clean within a lunar cycle." His officers nodded agreement, already planning the division of Earth's resources among the fleet. None of them had any experience fighting in dense vegetation. None had ever faced an enemy that could disappear into terrain their sensors couldn't properly penetrate. None understood that they were about to encounter the most dangerous predators Earth had ever produced in the darkness below. Human Special Forces teams completed their final preparations. They'd studied their enemy for 3 days, learning movement patterns, identifying weaknesses, preparing ambush that would turn the aliens' technological superiority into a liability. The Zephyrians had conquered 200 worlds by fighting. Conventional armies in open battlefields were superior. Technology guaranteed victory. But they'd never faced humans in their natural habitat. They'd never experienced warfare where the environment itself was a weapon, where every tree could hide death, where their enemies could strike from nowhere and vanish like ghosts. Captain Santos checked her equipment one final time as her team moved deeper into the rainforest canopy. Tomorrow the real war would begin. The aliens thought they'd won, but they'd only captured the easy targets. Now they would learn what humans were truly capable of when fighting for their world on their own terms. The jungle remained silent around them, waiting. But in that silence, death was preparing to teach the galaxy's greatest military force a lesson they would never forget. Admiral Kekstar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In the past week, 17 extraction teams had vanished into Earth's wilderness zones. 12 reconnaissance units had lost contact. 6 supply convoys had been attacked and completely destroyed. The easy conquest of Earth was turning into a nightmare. "Sir, we've lost contact with the mining operation in Sector 7, reported the communications officer. "That's the third facility this rotation." The Admiral's forearms clenched in frustration. These weren't just random attacks, they showed sophisticated planning and coordination across vast distances. Somehow, the primitive humans were orchestrating a planet-wide resistance using tactics the Zephyrian military had never encountered. "Show me the attack patterns," he demanded. The holographic display revealed something terrifying. Every attack struck at exactly the right moment when Zephyrian forces were most vulnerable. Convoys were ambushed at natural choke points. Bases were hit when defensive patrols were at minimum strength. Supply lines were severed with surgical precision. Commander Vorth studied the data with growing alarm. "Sir, it's almost like they know our operational procedures better than we do." "They did?" Captain Santos and her teams had spent the week learning everything about Zephyrian military doctrine. Every captured soldier provided intelligence. Every piece of equipment revealed technological secrets. The humans were adapting faster than their enemies could respond. Deep in the Amazonian command bunker, Santos coordinated the largest operation yet. 20 teams positioned across South America were preparing to strike simultaneously at the aliens' primary resource extraction network. It would be a demonstration of human capabilities that the Zephyrians couldn't ignore. "All teams report ready," came the whispered transmissions from jungle positions spanning thousands of kilometers. "Targets confirmed, escape routes prepared." Santos checked her synchronized timepiece, a simple device that worked regardless of alien jamming technology. "Execute in 30 seconds. Make it count." Across the continent, human special forces emerged from concealment like deadly shadows. They'd been watching alien operations for days, learning patrol schedules, identifying vulnerabilities, preparing for this moment. The Zephyrian mining facility in Peru never saw the attack coming. Sergeant Rodriguez and his mountain warfare team struck during the shift change, when security was at its most relaxed. Shaped charges placed during the previous night's reconnaissance destroyed critical equipment while flashbang grenades disabled the alien workers. In Brazil, Lieutenant Kumar's river assault team used boats that moved silent as ghosts along waterways the aliens couldn't monitor effectively. They struck a processing center from an angle the Zephyrians had never considered vulnerable, appearing from the water like vengeful spirits. The Congo operation was even more sophisticated. Sergeant Major Chun had spent 3 days studying alien hover technology, learning how their vehicle's sensors worked. His team used that knowledge to approach a major extraction site completely undetected, moving through terrain that confused the alien scanning systems. Every attack followed the same pattern: swift, precise strikes that disabled rather than destroyed, followed by immediate withdrawal into terrain where the aliens couldn't follow effectively. The humans took equipment, prisoners, and intelligence, then vanished like they'd never been there, but this time was different. Instead of simply disappearing, the human teams activated broadcasting equipment they'd been positioning for days. Captain Santos' voice reached every Zephyrian communication frequency simultaneously. "Attention, Zephyrian forces," she said in perfect galactic standard. "You have spent a week learning what Earth's wilderness can do to unprepared invaders. This is your final warning. Leave our world now, or face the full capabilities of our jungle warriors." Admiral Kekstar felt his blood freeze as the transmission continued. The human female wasn't just speaking his language, she was using military terminology with perfect precision, demonstrating knowledge of Zephyrian protocols that should have been impossible to acquire. "Your technology is impressive," Santos continued, "but it's designed for fighting conventional armies in open spaces. Earth Special Forces have spent generations preparing for exactly this scenario. We can strike anywhere, anytime, and disappear before you can respond. Your occupation force is trapped in cities while we control everything else." The transmission ended with coordinates, locations. where captured Zephyrian soldiers could be retrieved in exchange for complete withdrawal from Earth. It was a negotiation, but from a position of undeniable strength. In the command bunker deep beneath the Amazon, Santos reviewed the night's results with grim satisfaction. Every operation had succeeded perfectly. More importantly, they demonstrated capabilities that would force the aliens to reconsider their entire strategy. Colonel Harrison's voice crackled through the secure communication system from his Canadian wilderness position. Confirmed success on all northern targets. The aliens are pulling back from forestry operations across the entire boreal zone. Similar reports flooded in from around the globe. The Siberian teams had eliminated 3 research stations. Australian Special Forces had captured an entire survey expedition in the outback. Himalayan units had disabled alien atmospheric processors at altitudes where Zephyrian equipment barely functioned. But the most significant development was psychological. Alien forces were no longer venturing into wilderness zones without massive escort formations. Even then, they moved with obvious fear, constantly checking sensors that couldn't detect camouflaged human soldiers. Major Thompson, coordinating from the Scottish Highlands, provided the most telling intelligence. Intercepted communications show their commanders requesting immediate reinforcement from other sectors. They're treating Earth as a high-threat environment now. The transformation was complete. In 1 week, human special forces had turned the aliens' easy conquest into a costly occupation that threatened to drain resources from their entire empire on the Zephyrian command ship. Admiral Kekstar faced a crisis he'd never experienced in 3 centuries of military service. His forces controlled Earth's major cities, but they were effectively trapped there. Any attempt to exploit the planet's resources resulted in losses the fleet couldn't sustain. "Sir, Central Command is demanding status reports," the communications officer announced nervously. "They want to know why resource extraction is behind schedule." Kekstar stared at the tactical display showing Earth's wilderness zones marked in hostile red. How could he explain that primitive humans had turned their own planet into an impregnable fortress? That every tree could hide death, every valley could become a killing ground? "Prepare a full report," he said finally. "Include all combat footage, casualty reports, and intelligence assessments. Central Command needs to understand what we're facing here." The report would make for sobering reading. Earth Special Forces had demonstrated capabilities that challenged everything the Zephyrian military thought they knew about primitive species. These humans fought with technologies reverse-engineered from captured alien equipment. They coordinated across impossible distances using communication methods that bypassed all jamming attempts. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to understand Zephyrian psychology better than the Zephyrians understood human capabilities. Every attack was calculated for maximum psychological impact, designed to make the occupation force feel vulnerable and isolated. Commander Vorth reviewed the latest intelligence assessments with obvious discomfort. "Sir, our analysts believe these human special forces have been preparing for interstellar invasion for decades. Their tactics, equipment, and coordination levels suggest long-term planning specifically for this scenario." The Admiral nodded grimly. Earth's defenders hadn't just survived the initial assault, they'd been expecting it. While his forces celebrated easy victories in human cities, Ghost soldiers had been positioning themselves for a guerrilla war that would make holding the planet impossible. "What are our options?" he asked. "We could request orbital bombardment authorization," Vorth suggested reluctantly. "Eliminate the wilderness zones entirely." Kekstar considered the possibility, then rejected it. Orbital bombardment would destroy the very resources they'd come to harvest. More importantly, it would demonstrate to the entire galaxy that the mighty Zephyrian fleet had been defeated by primitive humans using nothing but superior tactics and intimate knowledge of their terrain. A new transmission interrupted his thoughts. Captain Santu's voice filled the command bridge once again, calm and confident. "Admiral Kekstar, you have 6 hours to begin withdrawal procedures. After that deadline, we will consider your presence an active threat requiring immediate response. You've seen what we can do to isolated teams. Now you'll learn what happens to forces that remain in our territory without permission." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Everyone understood the implication. Earth's special forces were no longer content to simply defend. They were preparing to hunt the aliens. Main force. In jungle command posts across the globe. Human special forces teams prepared for their most ambitious operation yet. They'd spent a week learning how to fight Zephyrian technology. Now they would teach the galaxy's greatest military force why. The extraction team's landing craft touched down in what appeared to be an empty clearing deep in the Amazon rainforest. Lieutenant Zexkor led 20 Zephyrian soldiers out of the vehicle, their sensors sweeping for threats that didn't exist. According to orbital scans, this zone contained valuable mineral deposits with zero military presence. "Deploy standard extraction protocol," Zexkor ordered through his helmet communicator. "Teams of 4, establish perimeter, begin resource assessment." The Zephyrians moved with practiced efficiency through the dense vegetation. Their powered armor easily pushed through vines and undergrowth that would have stopped unaugmented beings. Energy readings showed promising deposits. Just 2 kilometers ahead, what their sensors didn't detect were the 20 human soldiers watching them from positions less than 50 meters away. Captain Santos and her team had been tracking the landing craft since it entered atmosphere, moving through the jungle canopy like shadows while the aliens crashed through the undergrowth below. The Zephyrians had never learned to move quietly. Their armor systems were designed for open battlefield combat, not stealth operations in dense terrain. Every step registered on seismic sensors the humans had placed throughout the area. Every communication was intercepted by equipment the aliens didn't know existed. "Contact in 30 seconds, Santos whispered into her throat microphone. "Teams Alpha and Bravo, take flanking positions. Charlie Team, prepare suppression fire. Delta Team, extraction route." The humans had studied 3 days of Zephyrian combat footage. They knew the alien armor could withstand conventional weapons, but they also knew every piece of equipment had weaknesses. Power supplies, joint articulation, sensor arrays, communication systems, all vulnerable to the right kind of attack. The first Zephyrian squad reached a natural choke point between massive trees. They'd paused to consult their sensors, completely unaware that they'd walked into a kill zone prepared hours earlier. Above them, human snipers adjusted their aim on specific armor joints. Around them, shaped charges waited behind camouflaged positions. Lieutenant Zexkor was studying his scanner display when the first shot rang out. The projectile wasn't aimed at his armor, it struck the sensor array on his helmet, sending sparks cascading across his vision. Before he could react, 20 more shots cracked through the jungle, each one precisely targeting critical systems. The Zephyrians stumbled backward, their sensors dead, their communications filled with static. But they were experienced soldiers. They'd faced ambush before. Standard protocol was to establish defensive positions and call for support. That's when the shaped charges detonated. The explosions weren't designed to kill, they were calculated to disorient. Disable and separate the alien squad. Trees crashed down, blocking retreat routes. Smoke filled the air. The carefully maintained formation dissolved into chaos. Unknown contacts. Zexkor shouted into his communicator, receiving only static in response. "We are under attack." But his transmission never reached the landing craft. The humans had been jamming Zephyrian communications since before the ambush began, using technology reverse-engineered from captured alien equipment during the first day of invasion. The aliens tried to fight back, but they couldn't see their enemies. Their energy weapons discharged into empty jungle, vaporizing vegetation while human soldiers moved like ghosts through terrain they knew intimately. Every shot revealed the Zephyrian positions while the humans remained invisible. Santos watched through her scope as the aliens clustered together, trying to protect each other's backs. Exactly the wrong response for jungle warfare. She signaled her teams, and the second phase began. Flashbang grenades exploded around the Zephyrian position. Not enough to penetrate their armor, but sufficient to overload their remaining sensors. In the confusion, human soldiers emerged from concealment just long enough to attach. specialized devices to alien power systems, the Zephyrians felt their armor shutting down section by section. Life support remained active, but weapons, communications, and mobility systems failed systematically. They found themselves trapped in powered-down armor, unable to move effectively through the dense undergrowth. "This is impossible," Zexkor muttered, struggling to operate manual controls he'd never needed before. "Primitive weapons cannot disable our systems." But the humans weren't using primitive weapons. They were using alien technology captured during the city battles, modified and improved by Earth's best engineers working around the clock. Every Zephyrian weakness discovered in 3 days of observation had been exploited. The ambush lasted exactly 12 minutes. When it ended, 20 Zephyrian soldiers lay disabled in the jungle, their armor functioning just enough to keep them alive but not enough to fight back. Their weapons were gone, their communications dead, their sensors blind. Captain Santos emerged from the undergrowth like a jungle spirit, her camouflaged uniform making her nearly invisible even at close range. She approached the helpless Lieutenant Zexkor, whose armor was completely immobilized. "Can you understand me?" she asked in accented Galactic Standard, a language Earth's linguists had decoded from intercepted transmissions. Zexkor stared at the human female through his helmet display. She was smaller than any Zephyrian warrior, carried weapons that looked crude compared to energy rifles, and moved through the jungle terrain like it was her natural habitat. Double quotes, how. "How do you speak our language?" he managed to ask. "We learned it by listening," Santos replied. "Just like we learned everything else about you. Your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. You spent 3 days thinking this was over. We spent 3 days preparing for the real war." Around them, more humans materialized from the jungle. Zexkor counted at least 30 soldiers, though his damaged sensors couldn't be certain. They moved with disciplined precision, checking his men for injuries while securing alien equipment. "Your orbital command will send search parties," Zexkor said, trying to maintain some authority. Santos smiled grimly. "They already tried. 3 more extraction teams landed in different zones today. None of them are reporting back either." The lieutenant felt something cold settle in his stomach. The human's confidence wasn't bravado, it was the certainty of someone who held all the advantages in this environment. Similar scenes were playing out across Earth's wilderness zones. In the Congo Basin, Sergeant Major Chun's team had disabled 2 Zephyrian research parties using modified alien technology and tactics perfectly adapted to dense rainforest. The aliens' heavy armor became a liability when they couldn't move quickly through tangled vegetation high in the Himalayas. Colonel Tanaka's mountain warfare specialists had turned the terrain itself into a weapon. Alien hover vehicles couldn't operate effectively in thin air and unpredictable winds. When they landed to deploy troops, human teams struck from positions. The aliens couldn't even reach with their equipment. The pattern repeated everywhere. The Zephyrians ventured into Earth's wilderness. Superior technology meant nothing when the environment nullified its advantages. Heavy armor was useless when it couldn't navigate difficult terrain. Energy weapons were ineffective when you couldn't find targets that blended perfectly with their surroundings. Back on the command ship, Admiral Kekstar studied the reports with growing confusion. 6 extraction teams had gone silent in the past rotation. All had landed in supposedly empty wilderness zones. All had simply vanished without trace. "Could there be technical malfunctions?" he asked his sensor officer. "Negative, sir. All equipment tested perfectly before deployment. Last communications indicated normal operations, then nothing." Commander Vorth leaned over the tactical display. "Perhaps these wilderness zones aren't as empty as we believed. But our deep scans show no major settlements, no industrial facilities. Where could an organized resistance be hiding?" The Admiral ordered high-resolution scanning of the areas where teams had disappeared. The results were mystifying. Dense vegetation, minimal heat signatures, no structures large enough to hide significant military forces. Yet somehow, experienced Zephyrian soldiers were vanishing without trace. "Deploy reconnaissance drones," Kekstar decided. "Full-spectrum analysis." I want to know what's in those jungles. The drones launched within the hour, equipped with every sensor the Zephyrian military possessed. They scanned for energy signatures, heat patterns, electromagnetic emissions, and structural anomalies. They found nothing that registered as a threat. What they didn't detect were the human soldiers, who tracked each drone's flight path, analyzed its sensor frequencies, and prepared countermeasures for the next phase of operations. The same engineers who'd reverse-engineered alien communicators were already working on drone jamming systems. In her concealed command post deep in the Amazon, Captain Santos coordinated with similar teams across the globe. The first day of real fighting had exceeded all expectations. The aliens' technological advantages disappeared completely in dense terrain where they couldn't maneuver effectively. Phase 1 complete, she reported to her encrypted communication network. Enemy extraction teams neutralized. No casualties on our side. Moving to Phase 2? Phase 2 would be more ambitious. Instead of simply ambushing isolated teams, they would begin hunting the alien supply lines, support infrastructure, and command positions. The goal wasn't just